Then you've got the math not mathing. But then if you take the math and you add up, you know when the math would math? Right before the next election cycle.
Oh,
So if
that's
you want
funny.
to buy an election, right, preface how you're going to issue money out that you haven't collected yet, but from a time frame you could. So if you want to watch this whole thing play out, the Supreme Court says, oh, you know what, you can do this with tariffs because you're going to give the money back to the people. But you can't have enough money to do that until right before the next election cycle. So just issue those checks while people are voting for you again. And everything's going to work out for the good.
Yeah.
That's the Trump 2K check. It is 3D, or no, I'm sorry, 4D chess being played if you really look at all the parts.
And well, to be honest, I don't think it's going to happen. But
Well, the problem, I mean, if they can't even get it out of committee and get it to a vote, probably not. But
yeah, but I mean, even if it did, I think the inflationary effects on the economy would be interesting to watch. So,
everybody will just put into meme stocks. I tell you what, if that does come, I am piling into meme stocks right before those checks are issued, and I'm going to wait for that money to flow through Robinhood.
yeah, you saw the same thing happen in 2020, right? So, yeah, I don't think so. In the interview that Besant was doing after Trump posted that, he kind of scrambled a little bit to explain like how it might be done, and one of the kind of things that he offered was, well, maybe he meant it as like it might be a tax credit that we end up giving back to people at the end of the, like you'll get some.
Mentioned something against auto loans that seemed like totally out of left field. I'm like, I still can't put
Yeah.
that together. Can you
So
imagine working for this administration? Right? If you worked in the Biden administration, every word that was ever said was scripted like 90 days before it came out of the puppet's mouth. With working in the Trump administration, you could go to lunch with him and then go do an interview and get hit with something that you've never heard of and have to make it sound like, oh, yeah, we just had lunch about that.
yeah, that's
Oh,
exactly
my
right.
goodness.
So that's our segue into Trump's other proposal from over the weekend,
Oh, okay.
which is to, in part to combat the housing affordability crisis. Trump proposed that we start doing 50-year mortgages instead of most people nowadays do 30. Reaction to a 50-year mortgage.
Oh, Richard. All right, before we go into what's wrong with it, let's talk about what else could be done to fix the housing problems, right? Because there's a great deal, many things, right? First time home buyers could be given lower interest rates. They could be given waivers for PMI, which is mortgage insurance. They could be given lower down payments, although a lot of those things, if not coupled with still needing a good credit score, are what led to parts of the 2008 housing crisis. I want to acknowledge that so that people don't call me out and say, hey, you know what, we tried that, no money down type stuff, and look where it got us. But where we failed is that the lenders became unscrupulous and just decided to give money to anyone without documentation or paperwork to see that they could really afford it. Then we've talked about this before. Private equity, what percentage of homes in America? It's a small amount, but it's enough to loosen things up to drive down pricing. Then in a lot of major cities, especially New York, the permitting process to build is just insane. So you could loosen regulation to make it easier to build. You could lower rates for first time buyers. You could lower down payments. You could change PMI. You could do a lot of things to help get more people in the housing market other than 50-year mortgages.
Mhm.
Now let's
So
talk about 50-year mortgages and the math not mathin'.
one interesting stat that I'll just add to that really quick. There was an article that came out this morning. 40% of American homeowners are currently mortgage free, which is the highest on record. Some of that is because baby boomers own the majority of homes, and they're old, so they paid off their houses already, or they downsized. But it is the highest percentage ever, which is kind of just interesting because we talk about like housing crisis and correction. But with 40% of homeowners owning their homes, mortgage free, there's a cushion there that I think is important to kind of keep in mind.
Interesting. And we've talked about this before, and it's a slight segue, and we'll come back to the 50-year mortgage, right? When we bought our last house, right, we did a 15-year mortgage, right? We figured out that was the best that we could do. We couldn't really get into the 10-year, but we could get into the 15-year. And then it was about paying that off as quick as humanly possible. because to me, that's still a cornerstone of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of your largest expenses is keeping a roof over your head besides healthcare when you age. And if you don't have that done, right, you're at risk across every metric of economic well-being. And I know many people argue, right, rent and invest the rest. I think it's one of the worst decisions. So I want home ownership, right? I want home ownership for every American. 40% is awesome. That's
Mm-hmm.
40% of people that have broken out of the rat race, whatever their ages are. And you're right, there are probably a lot of baby boomers and even a lot of Gen X at this point that are coming into that.
Yep.
But getting your house paid off is a key element, right?